Hi everyone, welcome to our masterclass on how to build a scouting department in football's new era, here at Escuela Universitaria Real Madrid, Universidad Europea. Let me introduce myself. I'm Fernando Chervé, currently under 19 team manager at Villarreal Club de Fútbol, my former scout at Malmo, and Master in Dirección de Fútbol alumni. Today we're going to talk about how to create a scouting department in accordance to the club's needs, resources, philosophy, the talent identification process, how to select the target markets, how to establish the scouting process. And we have two very special guests joining us in this class, Jaime Segura and Gustavo Tamayo. First, I would like to introduce Jaime Segura, who is also a good friend of mine. He's a scouting coordinator at Malmo and also a Master in Dirección de Fútbol alumni. Jaime, welcome.
Fernando, nice to meet you again. Pleasure to be here in this masterclass and also sharing this moment with you guys, with you, Gustavo, with Fernando, and hopefully we can have a good time and talk a little bit about football scouting and make sure that we tell everyone that we don't have a secret recipe, but this is just one way of doing it. So thank you, Fernando.
Of course. We're also joined today by Gustavo Tamayo. He's alumni of the Master in Football Coaching and Sports Direction Online. He's going to talk about his experience during the Master. Gustavo, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Fernando, for the intro. Looking forward to giving a bit of insights into how we do things. And I hope we all enjoy each other. Same thing, Jaime. Hope everything's well.
It's a pleasure having you here. Guys, before we start the presentation, I would like to ask you to leave your comments and questions in the chat so we can answer during the conversation. We're going to start the presentation with Jaime. Jaime, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Fernando. We'll give it a go. I think now everyone should be seeing the presentation. Before I start, I would like to emphasize the fact that this conversation will be, or this presentation will be much more fruitful for you, or the viewers, listeners, if you can ask some questions and don't stay quiet, okay? There is no such dumb question, so whatever you think that you want to know, just put it on the chat. Fernando will let us know, and we'll try to give you the best answer, okay? So here we go. So the idea of, like Fernando was explaining, the idea of tonight's masterclass is so we can talk, like the title says, about how to build a scouting department in this new football era. Okay, so the agenda will be to first to understand the context, okay, of where we are, where are we building this scouting department. Then we'll talk a little bit about talent identification, and here we're not going to talk so much of what are the factors that you need to consider when looking at a player, but just more the infrastructure around it, okay, to be able to find the best talent, all right? We will continue with the process, okay, the process inside a scouting department. You'll see it in a minute. And then we'll continue with selecting and understanding markets, which I think is a crucial part of the scouting process. And then we'll finish with something that could or could not belong to the scouting department. This is more of an internal question sometimes, but the adaptation process, okay? So first I would like to start with to explain, or at least to share, what do I think a scouting department is for and what's the main goal, or why do we scout? And I put the example, this symbol of trying to represent the doctor. And now I know that different cultures use the doctor for different reasons, but I'm from Argentina, and we try to go to the doctor to prevent, right? We don't want to go to the doctor when we are sick already, or when we are injured, or whatever might be the reason, because there you are already in pain, right? So we try to go to the doctor to prevent. And this is the same way for me, the same way I see scouting. We cannot go and scout when we are already in the need. We need to try to prevent. We need to be ready for that need. So we need to kind of expect the worst, right? We need to expect that our number 9 is going to get injured, or our number 9 is going to have a fantastic season and then he's going to get sold. So we need to have options already available. There is no time for you to go and look during the transfer market, because there you don't have enough time to watch properly. You won't be able to have a good sample size of the amount of video, amount of games, or watch him live even. So the main message here is we try to prevent and not cure. Okay. So starting a little bit with the agenda, I would like to start with the context. Okay, which it could be, all the topics are really important, I will say, but this is something central. Okay, this is where you need to, if you're going to build a scouting department, you're starting and entering a club, or you want to build a new scouting department and you're already working at a club, these are at least the three main topics you need to consider. Okay, so where are you? What's the club? Okay, what's the club needs? Where are you standing? Are you competing for the entering European competition if you're in Europe, okay, or international competition, let's say? Are you fighting for relegation? Are you trying to maybe mid-table and then in a long-term process maybe aspire for something higher? So understand where you are, okay? So for example, nobody can tell me, or I strongly believe that the scouting process that we have at Malmo, for example, it's impossible that it works exactly the same way in another club. Okay, it's really important that we understand the context. Okay, so to understand the resources that we have, okay, to understand what do we want to do, how do we want to scout, how often, what are the players that we need, and then like you see here, it's really important to understand when. Okay, the timing of when to go for a player, when to reach out for a player, how many games you need to watch first for that player. So, but then there is this game where you need to understand, okay, when is the right moment to present this player up? So for example, in the scouting department, we might have 10, 20 profiles that are ready to be presented, but is it the right moment to bring it up to your sporting director? Is it the right moment now, or should you be prepared before? So these three questions are something that I ask to myself very often. Okay, where are we? What is it that we need? What is it that we have? What are the resources? And here I want to make a little notation. I hear a lot of times, we don't have enough resources, so we cannot do this scouting. So we are a limitation. There is always a way. You just need to use your imagination. You need to make sure you understand and value the internal resources that you have at your club. And I'm sure you're going to find a way to have a successful scouting department. Okay. And then finally, like I was explaining, when do you watch that player? When do you go and travel? Do you watch him at home? Do you watch him playing away? Do you watch him playing in a big game or in a smaller game? These are all factors to consider. Okay. After that, like I said before, if you have any questions, do not hesitate. Okay. I'd rather you interrupt right away, or you send us the message and then we talk about it, rather than me having a solo here. Okay. So now that we were talking about when to watch a player and how to watch, we would like to talk about the talent ID. Okay. Main question for me here is, do I go for the best player that is out there in the market, or do I go for the best fit? And trust me, this is a very, very, very difficult task or difficult journey sometimes, because there is that player that you really like, is the one that has all the attributes that you think a striker should have, makes the movement that you think should be doing, enters the box in the right way, associates with the player the way you want. But is that the player that you need? Is that the player that fits your game model at this moment that you're playing right now? Is that the player that fits the club culture? And trust me, this sometimes we forget about this, but it's imperative that we understand what's the culture of our club. What are the fans paying their tickets for? What is it that they go want to watch the game for? Do they want to have a big representative? Do they want to have someone that drives the ball at high speed? Do they want someone that is more target, that associate, that is more patient to enter the box? What is it that they want to see? We need to consider these factors. Okay. The next factor I think is crucial to understand is also to analyze your current squad. Okay, what are the players that are going to be around this player? Okay, this next target that you're going to look for is how is he going to associate with those players? Do we, just to keep it simple as well, and to stick with the example of a striker, do we have a striker? So we see a striker that scores a lot of goals. Okay, scores a lot of goals, and then we don't have anyone that. Sorry, most of these goals are from crosses. Let's say, okay, crosses in the air. But then in our team, we don't have anyone that will arrive into the end, cross it, okay, and then find our target. Is that the best fit for us? This is just a very, very simple example, okay? So this is also a question that you need to understand, okay? I see this player, looks fantastic. Can you imagine that player in your own squad? Can you see him performing the same way or better with the players that you have at your squad? Can you imagine this? And last but definitely not least, I believe that the first scouting should be done internally. Okay, before we go look for a player outside, let's first see what we have here. Okay, let's see what because the grass is always greener on the other side, right? Until we get there and maybe there is a hole here, maybe it's brown, maybe it's not ready, to be played on. So what is it that we have inside? Do we have an upcoming talent? Do we have a player that maybe in 1 year will be ready? Do we have a player that in 2 years will be ready? What is it that we have internally? Should we give an opportunity and maybe hold it for 6 months and maybe we believe that this player will be there? What is it that we have inside? I don't know, Gustavo, what you think about this, because I see that you're smiling as well.
Yeah, no, excellent, Jaime. You brought to my attention something that happened to where the team I'm coaching now, semi-pro team, last year. We decided to look internally with our under 18s, and we decided to ask our under 18s coach to send over the kind of the players he thought that could play with the first team. And we had we invited them to training with the first team, and we were surprised that one of them was a left-footed left back, 17-year-olds, extremely technical, great decision making. He he shined in that training session with the first team. And this is probably a position we would have went out somewhere else looking, but we never knew we had inside. So it's extremely important, yes, to always look inside in-house first, and evaluate with others, with the youth coaches, and invite them. If you can invite them to training, see how they are in that environment, how they perform, if they can adapt quickly. And yeah, luckily for this young player, he's with us now, and he's our starting left back every game.
And luckily for you as well, because you don't have to go and spend money somewhere else, right?
Exactly.
This is also a key factor. So the importance also, I would like to make a stop there and pause and think about the importance of bringing up some new talent, from the academy, because it's not only, saving money, but it's also building the culture, like building the trust with your academy. So the players see, okay, all the effort that we need to put is worth it, because they're going to wait for me, they're going to trust me, and they're going to give me the opportunity. And the message that you send, sometimes it's priceless. It's much more than what you think that you could be saving. So this is also a key factor. I think now we have some questions. So I don't know, Fernando, if you want to share them with us. I imagine that this topic arouses a lot of different opinions. So I'm really excited to hear. I don't think we hear Fernando about the questions, but we can continue. What do you think, Gustavo? And then we'll see when those questions arrive.
Yeah, just to add to your last comment, is extremely important, the message from the first team that you give to the young players, the other youth groups, because it is important for them to have someone to look up to, or someone to get to, so they can be motivated to train every day. And if we build that relationship with the coaches and with the young academy, then it helps us and it helps them as well, and the competition stays high, which is important.
Yeah. And I think something related to this matter, it's what's coming up here, and the importance of having a system, of having a process that also pays attention to all these factors, to be considered. So when the sporting director or the club director or whoever is in charge is going to make a decision, make sure that all these different departments are connected, right? So we have the right information and we're updated on what's coming, what's needed. I think Fernando is there now, ready for the questions?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear loud and clear.
Perfect. We have two questions. First, Quentin asks, do you primarily use the Moneyball principle, a way to achieve greater athletic performance by using data and statistics to build a player selection? Or do you sometimes dare to follow your gut against all data? How do you take such risks?
I'll start with that one. I don't think it's one or the other. I think you can combine both. I think someone that is very well known in this industry, Monchi, has said a few times, we won't sign a player only from data, and we won't sign a player without being through the data. Okay, so this is also really important. I'm mostly on the leaving the gut a little bit outside, okay, or decreasing that percentage, because I think this has a bigger margin of error. And I'm a big fan of data, of course, and the use of it. But we also need to, there is something that you need to trust about yourself, and also embrace that knowledge that you have on the football to understand, okay, this is the player that we have had players in the past that data was not looking so bright, so good, and then the players ended up performing well. So I would say both. I don't think you have to stick to either or. I don't know what you think, Gustavo.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to not just go with one, so you don't have any surprises. I think it's important to use the tools, yes, the statistics and analytics, to tell you certain performance things that you need, and then also the gut instinct is, for me, the gut instinct is seeing the player off the field, the things he does that you can't really get analytics to tell you what he does. And that's also important, if because you can kind of see behaviors, demeanors, player demeanors, how they react in different scenarios. And is that something you want to bring to your culture, like we talked about earlier? So I think both are extremely important, and to make a good and rounded decision.
100%. I think for us, data, we will rely heavily on it. Maybe it's not so much about sign this, but it's more about, look here, these are the players that you need to pay attention to. And then from there, you build on the rest. Okay, then it's where you travel to watch or you get on video. So I think the data is a very good friend to make your job a lot easier, because you only have a pair of eyes and you can have as many scouts as you want, but there are thousands of players out there. So it's really hard to actually know who are the players that have been performing during the time, because the basic example of it, that data can help you if what you're seeing is something that the player has been done in the past, or it's just one case where the player has performed fantastically well or poorly. Okay, so you don't get bias on just one performance. But yeah, great question. I would like to add on that, like something that we started is, why do you want to use data? What is it for? Okay, we use data because we have people that are professional in the club. We have 2 professional data analysts, and our organization is ready to talk about it. But if you don't have people in the decision-making process that understand what the data is telling you, maybe it's not necessary. Do I think that you're lacking something? Yes, personally, I do. But you also need to understand why you do. Are you going to use data, or are you going to buy a package of event data just because is the trend and everyone is talking about data, or because you really want to understand what data is telling you? This is also important to know, going back to the first slide.
Perfect. We have another question from Rudy. Rudy asks how to manage the relationship with agents as a scouting department, or is it better to leave the job for a football director?
Yes. I will say that how to manage. sometimes Daniel Gee wrote a really interesting book that is called Done Deal. That is called that agents are the evil needed, the needed evil. Okay, and I agree. You know, they are a great source of information, and I think you need to make sure that you build your network. Okay, and you try to build this relationship, because maybe I put it too tough there, but agents are usually seen as the bad person of the or the bad character of this story, and they do a lot of work behind the scenes, and they can really facilitate a lot of information and making things smoother. But sometimes keep them an arm length, right? To you don't have to let the agent run your operation, okay? But you need to make sure that he does his job for you, okay? So whatever is most um, whatever is that you need from the agent to get to know the players and to get to know the context and situation, because sometimes they might bring up a player that you don't know it was available, right? Or can give you some information. So I think it's both. I think the scouting department can have a relationship with the agent, but also obviously the sporting director is the one that is going to be probably dealing with them towards the end. It depends on the club, right? I don't know what you think, Gustavo.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to have a relationship with them. Like you said, there's information that you would never find out about the player if it wasn't for the agent. Sometimes the agents are really close to the player, especially within the social side. If you need to find out things about the player socially, and they sometimes they do bring up players that you might not have heard of. Or for me, mainly the key is just information, just information that you could not get because you're not as close to the player. So they have that information, and it's good to have relationships. But at the end of the day, it's extremely important to know and to handle those relationships professionally at the same time, and just knowing your limits and understand that at the end of the day that your interest is for the club you're working for first and almost, and then everything else you need to handle it extremely professional. But yeah, the information you get from agents is you pretty much can't get it from nowhere, because they're the closest to the player. Especially if you're trying to sign a player, there's no one else apart, obviously, from family that you might know. But I think they are useful, but you need to manage the relationships professionally, and it's really important.
Yeah. Shall we continue?
All right, we have one more question.
Okay.
Are you making lists in advance and then refresh them periodically, or do you seek for the players when need arises?
Well, just like we were saying before, I think this about this analogy between the doctor, preventing and not cure. The idea is that we can, week in, week out, we can update ourselves on all the players. Try to have this depends on each club and each model. I'm not saying that, but the way that we found that is effective for us is that we are continuously following certain leagues, that we will talk about that later as well. And we have our shadow team where we have at least 3 or 4 players per position, per role, I will say, instead of position, of the profiles that we're looking for. And so we can prevent, I don't want to sound repetitive, but so we don't have to go and start looking once something happens. Okay. But we are already looking. And for example, one of the main goals that we had at Malmo for the previous window was that we could be almost done before the window started. Okay. And in order to do this, you need to do your work way before. So you can kind of minimize the risk. Okay. So you don't get involved in these negotiations where you have no control, or you're waiting until the end to build your squad. And you leave your future on a lot of other factors, of external factors that you cannot control. So if we can control as much as we can, then I think you will have a more successful process in the end. Okay, because you're sure that of the decision that you're making. Good question. Should we continue?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so now talking a little bit of in relationship to this, I think it's crucial to talk about the process. Okay, and but by process I mean this is might not thought about, so you might not think about it so often, but it's really, really, really important that you understand what is the process of the player when he comes into the system. Okay, so we have incoming recommendations from data, incoming recommendations from video scout, incoming recommendations from scout, incoming recommendations from data, from agents. It can come from everywhere, you know. And sometimes you might be looking at that player and you have your scouts that make it notes and you put it on your database. And if you don't have an organized system, let me tell you, you're going to lose that information and you're always going to run from behind. Always, always. So it is really important that you understand, okay, I have a process established that if the player comes in, okay, I treat it this way. How do I move it to the next stage? Who watches? How often do we have to watch? What priority do we give to this player? If it comes from a trusted source, if it comes from a video scout, if it comes from data, to establish whatever is the way that you want to decide. Okay, I might have one way, Fernando might have another way, Gustavo might have another way, Pedro might have another way. It doesn't matter. Okay, so it's important that you have a process, that you understand, okay, player comes into the system, this is where information is going to land, this is how we're going to store information, and then this is how we're going to make decisions. Okay, we're going to watch this player this often, then if the player gets this amount of ticks, we're moving forward. Then maybe the chief scout is the final piece watching it, and then he's the one deciding, okay, do we bring it up to the sporting director or do we not bring it up to the sporting director once we gather all the information? Okay, so it might sound, sometimes it's like a non-tangible thing, right? Something that we don't really see, but once you are on it, you start saying, okay, where is all, how can I handle all this information? Okay, and then with this, I will say that it's really important that you have a communication channel that is as smooth as oil possible. Okay, so you are very clear on who is communicating to whom. Okay, and that information is kept somewhere and that is available for everyone. Okay, who needs it, of course. I don't know, Gustavo, if you have anything to add on this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the communication is key, and the processes have to be aligned, because at the end of the day, it's going to help a lot for the player, you know, and no mixed messages are going to be being bounced around the organization. So it's extremely important.
Yeah. So continuing with this, once we've established the process, so I always try to, before we're gonna go look for a player, before we're gonna start, looking for all of the, we need to understand who we are, okay, and how our process is gonna be. Because if we go look for players and we don't have a process established, then it's you're starting building the house from the roof, okay? So the house, you need to start it from the basement, okay? So once we establish these processes, we're going to move on, or at least I think you should move on finding the markets. Okay. Selecting and understanding markets is what is going to dictate how often you're going to get like good players, how available are they going to be, okay, and what is the percentage of let's say effectiveness that you will have on scouting players. So when talking about selecting markets, what I want to emphasize is when you're gonna go select the market, okay, when you're gonna go enter the market, you need to know who are the agents leading the market, what are the salaries like, what are the club's financial situations, what are the clubs within the league that have the biggest share. Okay, do you have a possibility to sign that player before the big fish comes in and takes them all from a smaller club, or is it impossible, or is it, or do you need people on the ground? Okay, so understanding all these key factors are the ones that you're gonna gain a lot of market knowledge, okay, and that's gonna make your job easier, okay, because you can look on players on Wisecout all you want, you can think that you have the information, but you might not know what's happening behind the scene, okay. So the more you can get into news, get to know people at different clubs, maybe ask players that have been playing there before, to gain more knowledge on the market, okay. And one of the at least one of the process that I like to work on a lot, and something that it has given us really good results, is to do a little bit of research when analyzing a new market. So let's say we want to enter the Uruguayan market, okay, a market that is super trendy now, that a lot of good players have come out from. Okay, where did those players go? For how much? And when they went to another country, how did they do? Did they establish? Have they been, for example, Sweden? We know how it is with the weather. We know how it is the condition. We know what is the football style. How do those players adapt to these kind of markets? Has everyone been in these kind of markets? Is it something? What happened with the player has been to that market, and after has it gone to a better club? Has it gone back to Uruguay? What has happened from those players that left those markets? How have they adapted? So under it sounds very attractive, Uruguay, but do I really understand why do I want to go to that market? Do I really have knowledge? If I want to go sign a player, am I going to be able to have all the information possible to really understand if that player is the right fit for me? Or do I go by, okay, this is a good player, I've analyzed it through data, and that's it. We try to get in touch. How do we even get in touch with the player? How do we know if the agent is the right agent? So again, because I've seen models that they have maybe 4 markets and people say that it's too little. And then I've seen clubs that say like, no, you need to have 30 or 40, you need to look everywhere. Well, there is no right answer. Okay, it depends what you're looking for, depends what your needs are, right? What do you think about this, Gustavo?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you, and I think it's important to understand as well your. I think you talked about it earlier, your context and what market you can actually reach. So you're not, looking in the wrong market and pretty much wasting your time. If you can establish what market you can go to, it would help you out. Uh, especially with your context is important.
Well, I'll tell you, I have a story on this one. I'm not going to say the country, okay? And I'm not going to say who said it, just to keep it private. But there is one country that they have told me, for example, when I was trying to investigate, I say, why don't you cover this market? I don't know enough. Well, there is one thing you should know, he said. The players that come from the northern part of the country are the ones who are not able to adapt anywhere else. They like to be home. They like to be in their comfort zone. They like to be in this weather. And then the ones from the south are more outgoing, are players that have been or players that have been from here have a much more successful rate. So, details like this, understanding, okay, what happens if I get a player from this club? Is it the same that if I get it from this other club? Is it always the same prototype? So trust me, this can be in retrospective, looking back on what we were saying in the beginning. This is part of preventing. Okay, this is part of understanding what are your risks. Okay, how can you make sure that you minimize your risks? So I think it can be underestimated sometimes, but I think it should be, you should put a really tough thought through process before you select the market. Okay. So once we've selected the markets, we have our process. We know what player we want to go for. We engage in the negotiations. I'm not going to get so deep into that. But now we have the player. Okay, now the player has arrived. So our scouting job is done, right? We made sure that the player has landed. That's it. Scouting department is finished. Well, I don't believe so. Again, like I was saying in the beginning, this could be a bit controversial. I know that certain clubs want to manage it one way, certain others, they think that this lands on the scouting department. But I strongly believe that the scouting process is before the players arrive, during the players' arrival, and after the player is here. Once the player is in within the squad, once the player is within the club, how can we make sure as a club that this player has all these different pieces aligned to be able to perform at its best? Okay, this is really important. Are we helping him with the family? What are the family needs? Does he have children? What are the children gonna go to school? Okay. Does he have pets? Does he have something to be worked with paperwork, with taxes? How are we helping the player? How are we helping the person, which is the same? The player and the person are the same. You cannot split them. Okay, it's one single person. How are we helping how are we making sure that person is in the best situation, best environment possible to perform at his highest? Okay, I speak. Gustavo, before I open up, I think we have some questions.
Sure.
So, Fer, if you want to share with us, we're more than happy. Well, I think he might be connecting again. There he is. There he is. Fer, yes, we listen to you.
How do you make your decision when a player is doing great but in a much weaker league?
Who's asking? This is really important. We want to know.
BB, but it doesn't say his name.
BB. Okay. He stays incognito. How do you evaluate? What's the question? Sorry.
How do you make your decision when a player is doing great but in a much weaker league?
Yeah, really good question. Really good question. I would say that data can be a big part of this, can be a huge part of this. If you have the right models where you try to measure the level of the league, you can pick certain parameters. Some people pick market values, some people pick the impact of the players after they come out. There are different parameters that you can pick, but I will say there is no, like we said in the beginning, there is no secret. Okay, here it's work. You need to work the league. Okay, you need to understand. Okay, what has happened before? Like the example that we were saying with Uruguay. I'm not saying that Uruguay is a weaker league than Sweden, but what has happened with these players that come out from this league? Now, does it mean that all the players are going to be the same? No, of course not. But what are the cases? Okay, do we have any cases? Or if there are no cases, you go back to the beginning. You go back to understanding who you are. Okay, what is it exactly that I want from a player? Okay, and when I look at the player, do I see these behaviors? Do I see the behaviors that I want in my team? You need to really know your squad. You need to really know your game model. You need to be very advanced in this matter, of course. But then it's much easier to go and understand, okay, is this player the right fit or not? You have to put in condition the opposite team. So, for example, the Swedish league presents a lot of physical games. Okay, at Malmo, we play against a lot of low blocks. And we see that this player that we're watching is fantastic in dribbling 1v1, but then we look at all the situations, and then all this 1v1 is against against one player or in 10, 15 meters. So then we go back and we say, okay, is this action going to be able to happen when it comes to Sweden, when it comes in place for us, and then 75% of the games are against a low block? Is this possible or not? He's a strike, just to keep it easier, okay? We go with a striker, winning all the aerial duels, finding the right time in the box to win his headers. Are the defenders the same as in Sweden? I'm not trying to embrace so much the defenders in Sweden, okay? But can we see certain similarities, or do we think that, or do we not, or we think, oh no, hold on, this player is able to jump because the centre back never looked his back, no awareness, he was nowhere in not using his arms, no timing. Can we pay attention to these details? Well, can we analyze the rivals that this player is performing with against? So yeah, there are different parameters, but again, it's market knowledge and understanding who you are and understanding what you need from the player. Gustavo, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think I'm going to tie in the question a bit to the adaptation. I'll give you an example that happened a few years ago, and I was part of helping the player adapting here in England. The football team scouted him, and he suited the team and the league because he was tall, he could header, the aerial physicality, he could do it extremely well. But they missed a small part that he came from a part of the world where they like to play football. They like to build relationships with the ball, short passing, even from the back. But their playing style wasn't this. So we had to help the player adapt to that playing style that was more direct, right? Because he was making too many mistakes and giving the ball away too much in the back. So and he was getting frustrated because that wasn't him, right? That wasn't not what he was used to. He always grew up with small passes from the back all the way to until you score. And he was really tall and really physical. So this was missed by the team, but luckily it was part of the adaptation process. And the player, after a season or two, he adapted to the league, adapted to the football style of the team, and he became he was more reliable. It was someone the coach could just pick because he wasn't making those mistakes that they missed on before and they didn't see. So if like you said, if we understand what we want, what type of player we do, and we compare all these parameters, then that's how you can kind of make that decision. That is okay, we can bring him, but there's always going to be small details that you might have to help the player to adapt.
Yeah. And also maybe my answer sounded very, academic and very process oriented and everything. There is sometimes you have to take a risk, guys. This is what it's about. Thomas Frank said in an interview, not taking a risk is also a risk. Okay, he was explaining in another context, of course, in the game style, in the playing and so on how to play games. But this is similar. Okay, you have to take a risk, and yeah, you're gonna miss. You're gonna miss, of course. Sometimes you're gonna miss, or most of the time, sometimes you're gonna miss. But if you try to consider all these factors, I think you have a much higher chance of succeeding. But yeah, there is sometimes that is okay. We take a risk and we see, and we make sure that when the player comes in, we put him in the best conditions for him to perform. Okay, but there are a lot of unmanageable things, factors that could happen. Some problems with his relationship, a problem with the family, or the first action that happened when he's made his debut was unfortunate. He sleep, whatever can happen. Okay, but I think you have to take a risk. Good question, really good question.
Perfect. We have one more question. Diego Benvenucci. How many data analysts and scouts do you consider as a minimum to have a good cover for the club? And what roles do you consider as a necessary fit? As in position scouts, area scouts, beta scouts, etc.
No answer. No answer. There is no answer for that one. It goes back to the context. I could work with, we have 2 data analysts, we have 25 video scouts, we have a chief scout, we have a scouting coordinator, and then some other people that also help within the organization with the scouting. But that works for us. That works us at Malmo, and those are the resources that we have, and those are the needs that we have, or that we think that we have. But there is no minimum. You need to understand, okay, if you don't know why you're doing things, okay, and you will this is what I wanted to go as well. This is a really good question to get into this final slide, that you need to understand why you're doing it. Okay, why do you want to have a scouting department? Why do you think you need the data analyst? Because you need to reach other markets, because you see that you can have an advantage. There is no right answer. I'm sorry if that's a disappointment. I'm sorry to be the one to disappoint you, but there is no right answer. Okay, what works for us is not going to work for the team next to us, even if the team that is in the same league or similar history, similar amount of titles, close in the location. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because every club has its own identity. I like to talk about when I go visit different clubs. I always say that clubs are like flowers, okay? And every flower has a smell. So every club has a different smell. What is that club saying? Sometimes you enter to a club and you smell greatness. Sometimes you go to the club and you smell, things are out of place. It's not organized. It looks a little bit, dark. People are not kind. What is it that you see from the club? What is it that you think you're going to need? Are you going to have a sporting director that is going to respect the whole process of data? Are you going to buy all these packages and then use them? Or are they going to be there and you should have used the money for something else? So again, there is no right answer, and the only right answer is the one that you think fits best with your model. Okay, and something that I forgot to mention before about the process is that it's imperative that you test your process at the end. Okay, so you need to set a timeline. Okay, so you're gonna say, okay, we're gonna test this way of doing the scouting for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, however, whatever the process, the timeline it is, and then you need to test and look back and not ask questions when things go wrong. You also need to ask questions when things go right. Why have we been successful? What is it that made us successful? Was it a bit of luck sometimes? Of course, it could be 100%, and you will need it. But the harder you work and the more you analyze the different situations, the luckier you're gonna be. So that's the way I see it. I don't know, Gustavo, what you think about this as well.
Yeah, I think the context is extremely important, and also if you work in scouting, can you adapt to that context? You know, you might also need to adapt to that context, and make the best you can with what you have in your hands. You know, like you said, there's the scouting of Man United is different to the scouting of a League Two club. You know, you can't. There's no right, or you have to really understand the context, and like you said, why is extremely important, so you can do the best job with what you have, and that way you won't be complaining or stressing about things.
Yeah, and also why are we entering this market? Like we were saying, why are you entering this market, or why are you bringing players? Why are you scouting? Are you scouting this player to test the market, to see how the players adapt, and then in the future go for bigger purchases? Are you bringing in this player because, of course, most of the time, or I can imagine that you say, okay, I want to bring this player to strengthen my squad because I might have a need, right? This sounds obvious, but what do I want with this player? Do I want to bring him in to perform, and then what? And then sell him, and then bring him back? Why do I want to do things? Why do I want to go scout? Okay, why do I want to have data? Why do I want to have video scouts? You need to ask these questions. Okay. Fer, any other more questions?
Yeah, we have more questions. Jorge asks, how can you convince a player that your offer is better?
Well, you put in more zeros next to it. That's how you can convince them. Well, I think this is it can sound very romantic, what I'm going to say, but one way of doing it is understanding the player. Okay, the better you do the scouting, you can do it through social media, asking the agent, there are multiple ways, I'm not going to disclose them, but the more you know the player, the more you will understand what he wants. Okay, if the player is sitting in the conversation and listening to you or the agent, that means that there is an interesting, there is an open, there is a door there that you can open completely, or you can shut it down. Okay, so the more you and this has happened to us, and we have lost players and we have won players versus another clubs, but I think the more you understand who the player is and what does the player want, I think the bigger chance you have to get him. Okay, and also present the project. Okay, the more you show them that you're gonna care, that you're gonna get something different at your club, that if you go somewhere else, this you might have a higher chance, of course. And make sure that you, like I was saying before, that you understand internally what are the resources that you have. Okay, so you make sure that the player knows exactly what he's going to be coming into.
Perfect. We have another one from Betty's. What if your club changes the coach or the whole technical staff and the club model or tactics change? Should we take this detail into account to bring a player?
Gustavo, I don't know if you wanna answer this one, and then I can continue because I have I have
Yeah,
one.
is that so? The question was, did they change the club completely, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Have they also
Yeah.
changed the club logo?
So yeah, did they change the staff? I think that this is why it's important for the club to have its identity and its own way in case things change. You know, it's important for it to be set beforehand. If the sporting director gets changed, but the identity of the club, the way of the club, and the philosophy is already installed, then the change is not going to be too impactful. I would say, obviously, if a new owner comes in and he just wipes everything and starts in with a blank canvas, then that new owner will have to establish everything from, starting with the history of the club. Who is the club? What have they won? Who are the fans? And start from there. A blank canvas of basically each department and what they want. But if that's not the case, if it's just a change of manager, hopefully there is an established philosophy and identity of the club, which can be useful for when you're interviewing a manager. This is our club, this is our history, this is how we like to play, and match that with the managers you're going to interview. So it can continue, and it's not too much of an internal kind of change and disruption, I would say.
100% agree with you. I think also, again, if you change the whole staff, then there is a new complete change of organization. But I'm a big fan of when scouting players, let's say if we keep the manager, that the club selects the player, okay, and the coach has to give the approval 100%, okay, because he's the one going to be working with him closely every day, okay. But the club should be bringing in the profile and say, okay, from these ones that we think are the right model, who do you like the most, maybe, okay. But the work has to be done before, and then I turn the question a little bit around. I will say you need to hire people that are aligned with your vision, so that when they come in, they don't ask for anything completely different, completely radical from what you've been working on. Okay, then if the whole stuff changes, like we were saying before, yeah, this alters the whole process, right?
All right. We have many, many questions. I wish we could stay the whole day here, but unfortunately, we don't have. It's not possible. But as last
I'm
question,
sure. Sorry, Fer. I'm sure we can maybe leave our emails, and if they want to send us some question through the emails, they can
perfect, of
absolutely
course.
do so. I'll be happy to. I will put my email on the chat as well. Okay, my personal email, and then if they want to get in touch, and yeah, whatever they want to ask, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Perfect. Well, as last question, Ali asks to mention the three biggest pillars to pick a player.
Huh. I would love to give you the answer of depending on your club. But I will say understanding where the player comes from. Okay. Understanding where is the player going to be in. Okay. So where is he going to fit? Okay. What is it that you want the player for? Do you want him to perform right away? Do you want him to perform in 6 months? When do you want him to perform? Because this is also the expectations are key. When you bring a player, say, okay, this has to be the player that is going to have an immediate impact, or we think he's going to be someone that is going to be a transitional impact. Okay. So I would say those two, and then the third one, I think I would say a lot more related to the game characteristics, right? To understanding the player, and to ask yourself, okay, what are the characteristics that no matter for us at least in Malmo, I'd like to use that there are three characteristics from the player that no matter what position, what profile they are, they have to have. Okay, which I can go briefly on them. Okay, but it is being able to play under pressure. Okay, have multi-direction, play in multiple directions. Okay, and be able to play to understand spaces is a little bit harder to explain, I will say, in a brief sentence, but to understand spaces in consideration to the teammates around him. Okay. I hope this kind of answers the question. I don't know, Gustavo, if you want to touch on it.
Yeah, I think for me, performance is the first thing. If I know we've scouted you, we know who you are, and so that's sorted. But then for me, that's something extremely important, is getting to know the player. Like you said, where do they come from? If I can know information about the family, small habits, small things that can give me a bit of insight into the player, and just building that kind of personal, social side of an image of the player, that will helps me a lot to kind of understand if that player will be kind of fit for the environment, for the culture, especially because we've had players come from places that you would never think they would fit into an English culture, but because the culture and the family feeling at the club, it has helped them, fit in with that side, because when we know their performance is good, but that side of the social, psychological side is help them fit into that culture. So just understanding them before they arrive, those aspects socially, where they come from, how just the smallest thing, what food do they like, what's their favorite food before they arrive. Those things are really important for me to take decisions into, for them to come, just understanding where they come from, who they are. I think that helps you a lot.
All right. I'd like to thank you guys, Jaime and Gustavo, for this amazing conversation. And I also like to thank you guys for joining us in this masterclass. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Don't hesitate to reach us out.